everyone, welcome back to Sevy Talks, where we cover a range of topics from Genshin Impact to gaming to guests and stories. And I come today with no guest because here we are talking purely about Genshin Impact and the very hot topic that has occupied the Genshin community for the past week or so. And it all started with the 4.4 live stream special program. In this video, I'm basically going to do like a quick recap of the events in case you're not super aware, but it's not going to be very in depth. Honestly, if you're looking for more in-depth timeline of what happened, there are a lot of videos out there because there have been channels and content creators that have already been covering this and giving their takes on it. So I'm just going to start off with that just so we can contextualize where we're at. And then I'm going to talk about the community response, especially what I have been seeing from my community since I posted a poll and got a lot of insightful feedback and comments that I really, really appreciate. And then in between, I'm also going to be giving my own opinion on the whole thing. And I'm hoping that this can kind of just cover different perspectives and sides of the situation so that we can also have a healthy discussion, more considerations for where players are coming from, and even possibly what are the better directions that we can hope that Hoyoverse will head towards as well. So if you're going to comment down below, and I do highly encourage you comment your own perspective if you weren't able to in my initial post and poll, then of course I would just hope that you keep it civil, especially when interacting with others. The internet can be a scary place, so let's not make this space a scary place. Let's just start off. Okay, so to recap how this all started. When the 4.4 live stream special program happened, towards the end where they were talking about the rewards that players could expect from the Lantern Rite event, they said, and to thank everyone for their support and company over the past year, we're going to use in-game mail to send you all 3 intertwined fates. However way you put it really does not sound like much, especially when you put it in comparison to Genshin's sister game Honkai Star Rail, which just gave out a free 5-star doctor ratio to all the players, basically. So there was noticeable pushback online regarding that one statement, that reward, and it was honestly it was kind of everywhere. It was on Twitter, it was on community comments on YouTube. People were live reacting to it. People were reacting to it after the fact, whether on their own YouTube or their Twitch streams and all of that. And it's overall just been a whole issue of the wider player base has seen how generous Honkai Star Rail is. So when Genshin says that they're just going to mail 3 intertwined fates to the community, like obviously it just pales in comparison. At the start, we were kind of just getting the tone of the anger and the disappointment from the global community, but then a couple days after, it started becoming known to the global community that the CN community, the Chinese player base, was also very angry about the whole thing, to the point that they were unfollowing Genshin's social media accounts like Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, Bilibili, etc. And they were also review bombing. So for the global community to learn that, hey, it's not just us, the CN community is actually really angry about this also, that did magnify the whole thing. And then it blew up even more, basically. It gained even more momentum. And at that point, it's just like, okay, what is Hoyoverse going to do? Because obviously they realize that something is wrong here if this many players are angry. So that's kind of what's been happening in very general terms over the past week. When the situation blew up, I honestly wanted to take some time to look at the different opinions and perspectives of the whole thing, because when it comes to online communities, you honestly run into a lot of situations where you're not sure at first if it's a case of the vocal minority being super vocal or super critical, and they don't really represent the vast majority. So I kind of just wanted to make sure that that was the case. And soon enough, it became obvious that it was indeed a majority of players, or at the very least, not just a vocal minority, that was upset with the whole thing. So I did put up a poll on YouTube asking my community and whoever else it would reach how they feel about the whole thing. Namely, I said Genshin 4.4's rewards and incentives or lack thereof. But honestly, it could be about bigger stuff, which we will see later on when we go over the comments on it. Anyway, I gave three options on the poll saying satisfied, unsatisfied, don't really care. It's been 5 days since that poll went up and it's garnered 28,000 votes. So thank you to everyone who did vote um, because it was really insightful for me. And out of that, only 9% are satisfied. And the rest of the 91% are split between unsatisfied and don't care. And it's leaning more towards unsatisfied at 49%, which means that that's like almost half, like 49%, 50%, that's like almost half of those who voted, and this is a very large sample size. So yeah, clearly it's not just a small fraction of the player base that's upset. It is a considerably large fraction. And then yeah, the remaining 42% are on the don't care category. And while it might be surprising at first how many voted don't care, when you look at the comments and when we will look at the comments later on, there was actually a lot of nuance to this. So yeah, we're going to get into that. But before we unpack all of those comments, I just wanted to start with saying that first of all, whatever disappointment or dissatisfaction that you do feel towards the game or the company is, it's definitely understandable, to be honest. Like there are a lot of reasons that players have voiced that are the source of their dissatisfaction, and I do find that a lot of them, like most of them, are quite valid. And whatever excitement on the other hand, whatever excitement or optimism you still feel towards the game is also quite valid, because hey, it's a game, like it's there for us to enjoy, and as long as you do get some joy from it or some entertainment from it at least, then to some extent it is doing its job. I think it's important to remember and acknowledge that both can exist at the same time, whether it's dissatisfaction but you're still excited, but you still enjoy some things. Like it's okay to enjoy something that you feel isn't meeting your expectations sometimes. Like it's totally okay. I've been reading like a lot of people expressing their grievances, their disappointment, and like I get it. Honestly, I get it. I have my own sources of disappointment for this game, which I will mention in a little bit, but honestly, I get it. So yeah, on my end, like I will agree that the rewards are lackluster, and the way that they said it was quite tone deaf. It is tone deaf, and I think a lot of people would agree at this point that if they hadn't even mentioned that it was like to thank players for, I'm doing air quotes here, to thank players for their support over the years. If they hadn't said that and then they just said like, okay, we're going to mail you three intertwined fates, like with no context at all, that probably would have been better. PR wise, I'm surprised that they greenlit that on the live stream, honestly. Like I'm surprised someone greenlit that they could say it that way, but hopefully they learned from this one. But at the same time, like I am still excited and hyped for the new characters, the new story, the new areas and all that, like the events. Like I do still very much enjoy the game. I still want to keep enjoying it, and I still want to keep sharing my enjoyment for the game. And I think that that is going to stay that way for quite a while. But at the same time, there are still things from Genshin that I think have been quite long overdue. Things that I've been wanting that I'm just like, are they going to give it this patch? Are they going to give it next patch? Are they just going to tell us when they're going to give it, or are they never going to give it? And these are things like the artifact loadouts. Like we have the fast equip option coming up in 4.4 that they did the whole developers discussion on. And I made an entire separate video on that. You can find it on my channel. But basically, I've been hoping for artifact loadouts so long. Other players have also. And right now, all we're getting is a fast equip. And all I can say is, I hope that that's a stepping stone towards the artifact loadout. But I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. I don't know. Another one is more quality of life stuff, honestly, especially in the artifact department. So aside from the artifact loadouts, things like self-modeling resin, is a big thing that we've been getting, and that we get in Honkai Star Rail, that people have just been like, why don't they have this in Genshin? And honestly, I get it. Honestly, I agree. Another thing is like a story progression tracker slash timeline, and they are actually adding this in Honkai Star Rail in version 2.0. They just announced it in the last special program. When they announced that, I didn't even realize that that's something that I wanted until they said it. And I'm sure that other players have thought of this. Like, yeah, it would be great if we had like guiding timelines or other guides or ways to archive or process the story, whether from for Honkai or Genshin. But the fact that they kind of just dropped that to put it in Honkai Star Rail, when I think a version of that for Genshin would be really great, because while Genshin does have a good story and a lot of interesting lore, it's so hard to keep track of them at times. So just things like that, that could help the player experience, that will help the player experience, that we get like a slow development of, they kind of add up. My point here is that while the rewards were disappointing and lackluster, in my opinion, it's more than that. And it all just leads to the part of the player base that are on the spectrum of disappointed slash dissatisfied or don't care. Like at this point, that's an entire spectrum. Like that is a range, because they're not entirely distinct, as we will see soon. They are not entirely distinct. I think that there's a bigger underlying dissatisfaction, whether it's from the rewards just indicating a long-term stinginess, or out of touchness, or tone deafness, or the lack of communication regarding things that players want. I really think that the rewards at this point are a bit like the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg goes surprisingly deep, if that makes sense. Okay, so now that I've kind of shared my piece on the topic, I would like to go into the poll replies and results and kind of take a deeper look into what players in the community are saying. Because yeah, I do like a lot of the comments and what they talk about and what they point out and things like that. I want to start with the positive ones, because I don't want to overlook the fact that there are still players who are satisfied with the game and who do feel overall positively about the whole thing, because it's important to acknowledge them. So one of them is from Janine Palafox. She says, I have played for a long time since 1.2, and I do agree that they did lack that aspect. And here I think that she's referring to the rewards. But after every patch and version, a lot has changed with Genshin and its quality, story, and content, that regardless of lack of rewards, it doesn't matter to me, as I am one of those players that love story and exploration. I think that while there are players who are satisfied with the overall game and the overall content, they don't disagree with the people who are disappointed with the rewards. And I think that it's nice to know that we can have some unity there, like we can have some solidarity there, where even for players who really like the game and who are personally happy with the game, like they are there, they can back up those who are unsatisfied with the game, like totally valid. And then we have April 2X, who said, after a bit over a year and a half, I've gotten most of the characters I wanted, and now I'm just waiting for reruns and new characters, so I basically never run out of Primo Gems. So that's where I'm coming from when I say I'm happy with what we get. I'm a lot more interested in the festive atmosphere, the story, seeing my favorite characters rerun, new area, which looks super good. And Lantern Rite has become, for me, an annual thing that I'm waiting for, like Christmas and New Year's, and I'm okay with that. I feel like this player has had a really good experience with Lantern Rite so far, and is kind of just there to vibe with the game, which is totally valid. And the whole thing about never running out of Primo Gems, it does speak to the context of how stingy is Genshin when it comes to things like primo gems and pulling currency, right? Like there's a lot of arguments about this, honestly, from that range from kind of calculating how much you can get in a patch, to what's obtainable for free to plays, to the pity system. It definitely depends on the player where exactly they fall in that spectrum. But then yeah, we do have players who just don't really have any issues with primo gems or primo gem count and wishes and all that. But of course, we know that when it comes to things like rewards, it's not just about the quantity, but also the intention behind it, which we'll talk about down in the other comments. Ekamine said, I didn't start Genshin because it's a gacha game, and I was very new to the gacha community too. So from the start, I never expected them to give me free stuff. And to be fair, I was taught you rarely get stuff for doing nothing, and since it's a free game, couldn't really expect anything either. I mean, it's cool to have free stuff, so I'm more comfortable pulling the characters I want, but I'm fine with my exploration, story, quests, music, events, and characters. So there's also that section of the player base that doesn't play gacha games. They don't play gacha games, so they don't really have that expectation yet, or don't really have experience in that culture yet of gacha game companies like rewarding their players or gifting their players with additional currency. I am to some extent part of that because when I played Genshin, I didn't really factor in the that it was a gacha game. I kind of just saw like, oh, cool character, this game looks fun, and then later on found out that okay, apparently you can buy currency here, and then that's what you spend for wishing, and then like, oh, okay, I see. I saw kind of a pattern in the more positive comments where they were basically saying that they never really think about the rewards, whether it's not natural to them or it's not really like in their idea of a game. Again, it's important to acknowledge that like not every player in the Genshin space has the same expectations when it comes to like content and rewards and things like that. Eric Faustine said, "It has been a year since I started playing Genshin. Next update will be my first Lantern Rite event because I did not participate last year. I don't really know what to expect and just enjoy the contents. I'm very satisfied regardless of other opinions." Though we had a player previously who has come to love Lantern Rite over the years, here we have a player who hasn't yet experienced it. So they're kind of just excited to see how special it's going to be, how celebratory it's going to be. And honestly, for that player's sake, for Eric Faustine's sake, I hope that they do enjoy it. Isabella says, "I'm not disappointed about the rewards, but I also had no expectations. Besides that, I'm very excited with a new area, the connection with the Adepti, as exploration and lore is what really makes the game for me. Personally, for me, it's nice to know that there are players who kind of who are like quite positive and optimistic about the whole thing, and even though like there's a lot of there are things like this that happen that do garner community dissatisfaction and anger, that there are players who are kind of just doing their own thing and vibing, and for me it's personally nice to know that there are players like that. I saw another category or trend of comments that are kind of neutral to satisfied leaning, like they're kind of okay with it, but then they also think that Genshin can do better. So the Masterflex said, "I'm AR60 with enough teams to rotate for specific Abyss phases, so these patch rewards are nothing to me, as I will buy Welkin BP to collect everyone anyway. I never minded this before since gifts are gifts. However, I do understand the frustration this time around. It's obnoxious knowing that they have no problem raising the ceiling of rewards for other games, but not Genshin, their moneymaker and one of their most loyal, long-standing fan bases." This is really a big theme where it's the birth of the meme Genshin could never. And although sometimes I do feel like the phrase gets overused, like I understand the origin of it because it's true. Like a lot of players have been noticing this. I'm not immersed in the Honkai Impact third community, so I can't speak for them, and I'm not going to try. But I've been seeing a lot of comparisons there as well. Roger Lopez said, "I've been playing since release, and even if I answer that I don't really care, I still believe Hoyoverse could do so much more for the Genshin community. I do play their other games, Honkai Impact and Star Rail, and not trying to compare, but you can feel the difference in which team is doing which game, TBH. I just hope the Genshin team does their best to maintain everything all right." The players who play several Hoyoverse games, they can see by contrast how Genshin is doing in regards to rewards and things like that. So it seems to be quite a noticeable difference. If you play several Hoyoverse games, let me know in the comments, especially if you play Honkai Impact Third, because I'm curious to know what the Honkai Impact Third um community's take on this is. Chiu said, "I'm a casual player, so it's okay for me. Too much content can be overwhelming sometimes. I still haven't finished Sumeru, but I agree they should improve the rewards so it will give motivation to the players to grind more." It's interesting that they should point out the rewards as an incentive for players to grind more. I think that it could just be simply seen as rewards as an incentive to make players feel appreciated, thus they will play the game more, thus they will grind more and things like that. Like they'll be more incentivized to play the game because they feel good about it. I just feel like there's no harm in upping the rewards because if they do, it will make players feel good and feel better about supporting the game because the game feels like they're supporting players back outside of the content that they're giving, extra gifts and extra rewards, like they do have that connotation to them. Eleanor Kim said, I've played Genshin since 1.4, and honestly, I don't really care if they've been giving the same type of rewards every anniversary or Lantern Rite patch, unlike HSR does, where almost every patch there is new content and a free 5-star character that is actually pretty powerful. But I do wonder if it's really too much to ask from game developers from a big company such as Hoyoverse to maybe up the rewards a little. They know they have such a loyal player base. And majority of that player base is probably also playing HSR, which is more generous incentives and content wise. I resonate with this comment because I also don't want to think that I'm expecting too much or asking too much or start feeling like entitled to more stuff just because like I'm such a loyal player and things like that. So for it to be phrased as I wonder if it's really too much to ask, like honestly, that is pretty similar to how I think about it. Like I wonder if it's too much to ask, what exactly is stopping them? Were they really just so out of touch that they didn't think this would make such a big fiasco? Or is that really their idea of rewards, or is it the fact that there are other that they do a lot of other stuff like IRL events outside that are supposed to replace rewards and things like that? Okay, so now we're going to move into the comments that are like disappointed slash not caring. And yeah, they do kind of blend into each other, even though they were separate answers on the poll. Because remember, or I have to point out rather, that when viewers have been commenting, they don't always say what they voted exactly on the poll. Like they could have voted not care or don't care, but then they explain in their comment why they are still disappointed anyway, but then they don't really say like, "Oh, I voted don't care," or I voted disappointed." So it could kind of go either way, but really I appreciate the comments for like being more specific with the sentiment because if I had just put up the poll and then no one had commented, like I would see that okay, 42% of people don't care, but then don't care about what the rewards, the special program, the quote unquote drama, the anger, so it really helps that these people did comment what exactly their issue with the thing is. Jude Watts said, I think for me, it's pretty valid for players to feel like the rewards this time around are pretty stale. Like having the same thing given to us every year kind of makes the game feel stagnant and not going anywhere with its production. It doesn't feel like a celebration and more of like a checklist of things to get. I know we're getting two skins this time around, but there's nothing really that special this time around to really get people excited. The 4-star selection, the usual skins we get, the same 20 fates worth of rewards, and I think this time it's going to be only 13 because it's 10 plus the 3. Like, they gotta do something special at least because people are having a hard time coming back to Genshin when everything feels relatively the same in terms of what we're getting every year. I think that Jude Watts put it quite nicely, in the sense that yeah, if we do keep getting the same things, it ends up feeling like a checklist instead of it kind of feeling bigger and better than the last year. And I hate to say it, but if we do keep getting the same things each year without there being like progression or something extra on top in the next year, then we start taking it for granted. And honestly, I don't like taking stuff for granted. So yeah, it kind of sucks to say. I understand how that attitude can kind of grow. For me, when it comes to Genshin content, like when it comes to a new region or a new story, Archon Quest, whenever there's a new thing, I like to ask, okay, how are they going to make it better than the previous region, than the previous Archon quest? And so far, in terms of story development, at least, I feel like they've been delivering. Like, I do think Fontaine was better than Sumeru. Sumeru was better than Inazuma. So I felt like there was a progression in that sense. And in terms of region, like even though I have a personal love for Sumeru, I do think that they definitely were able to make Fontaine as a region stand out even against Sumeru that was so large and introduced a lot of new fun stuff. So it's kind of the same thing that I would consider when it comes to huge events like Lantern Rite. Like, how will this Lantern Rite be bigger than last year's Lantern Rite? And although we haven't gotten the version yet, like, we haven't been able to play the version yet, so we don't know yet what is going to be up in game. Starting it off this way, saying that, okay, you're gonna get the usual stuff, the 4-star selector, a free 4-star skin, 10 wishes, plus 3 intertwined fates, like that as kind of the extra thing, it definitely doesn't feel that great. So yeah, there were a lot of comments that are obviously just straight up disappointed. Didn't really have much more to say aside from that, but I do appreciate Jude Watts for pointing that aspect out, because I don't think I would have been able to put my finger on it actually if they hadn't said it that way. Like the way the stagnation happens. Stagnation in a kind of like ongoing experience, especially something that you're trying to sell and like satisfy consumers with, it's not good. Earlier, among the positive comments, a lot of it was like, I don't play the game for the rewards, so I'm fine. But then we also have the category of disappointed comments where they know that they don't play the game for the rewards, but they are still disappointed anyway. So there's this one comment from Golasticus that it was one of the most liked comments on the post. So there's a lot of agreement there. Anyway, they said, I'm gonna say I don't really care because right now I'm not quitting just because they're not giving so much stuff. The game has enough in it to keep me coming back at least right now. However, I'm not gonna lie and say I'm happy with it. They've been incredibly stingy for so long that it really feels like there's a lack of appreciation from MiHoYo's end. And then later on in that comment, the same commenter also brought up IRL events like the concerts, the collaborations, and how we can appreciate those. And maybe they are supposed to be there to like offset or compensate for the lack of freebies or rewards and stuff. But they also said that they think Lantern Rite should still feel more special in terms of rewards. This is a comment from a player who a lot of people agreed with, that said that, okay, even if rewards for them aren't that significant, the lack of it still feels like a lack of appreciation from the company. Like, it doesn't feel like a reward if the reward is like that stingy, or if the reward is that puny in comparison to, especially in comparison to what like Star Rail players are getting. I will say that I really loved that Genshin uploaded their Shanghai concert. And I know this sounds completely unrelated, but Galacticus did point out IRL events like the concerts. And I, for one, really appreciate that they uploaded the professionally filmed video of their Shanghai concert, because I didn't get to attend any of the concerts. Only a fraction of the Genshin player base were able to attend any of the IRL concerts, because like they were only held in a few places in some specific cities, and then everyone else just kind of had to watch from social media and be like, I kind of want to watch the concert too, but I'm too far away and things like that. So when they actually uploaded the entire thing on YouTube, like, I was so happy because I freaking love their music. So I can definitely appreciate those, and I'm sure a lot of people appreciated those. But then we have like the other side of it where, okay, they are giving in one aspect, but they are lacking in another aspect. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge that it varies. Like, what they give varies, and it's okay to criticize where they lack, because let's be real, they do lack it, and hope that that criticism comes through and actually like leads to some improvement. Space Cat said, while the rewards are no different from when it was during the first anniversary, I'm at the point where I'm just going to enjoy for the story and lore. I'll take what I can get. So the first part of the comment, honestly, it kind of sounds neutral to neutral positive, but then it's the I'll take what I can get that stood out to me, because this is something that kind of toes the line between satisfied to disappointed but not surprised. I don't know if I'm reading into this too much, but if I say that I'll take what I can get, it's kind of like me just shrugging it, but I would still want more, you know? And then Chuya-san said, I used to care, but I realized over time I'm here for the long run anyway. I'm still gonna play for fun regardless of whatever they decide to gift us. That said, I still can't help but compare it with rewards from their other games sometimes. Ultimately, I guess I can live without it. Doesn't mean I worship Hoyo. They could do better. I've just stopped hoping. They said also, I have played mobile idle gachas with even worse rewards, so I suppose that's another reason. Well, it's good that they pointed out that they've played games with worse rewards, because for those who don't have like a wide variety of gaming experience, especially with other gacha games, then they don't have a lot of points of comparison. And right now, the primary point of comparison is between Genshin and Honkai Star Rail. For me, I haven't played a lot of gacha games, so I can't really compare Genshin to like older gacha games that have really, really bad rates or really, really bad rewards and things like that. I can't make that comparison. So I'm glad that someone else can make that comparison and point that out. That, yeah, there are games that do worse in that regard. But it is sad to see that they said at the end, I've just stopped hoping. And this does lead into the next category of comments where it's a lot of I just stopped hoping, like disappointed but not surprised. I stopped hoping. My expectations were low. Anyway, it's good to acknowledge that like rewards don't make up the game. Rewards are there to supplement the game, help players feel better about the game, but ultimately, if you enjoy the game itself and that's enough for you, then yeah, keep playing. Like you do you, keep doing that. So one comment Vital said, if I was only playing Genshin, I'd say I'm unsatisfied. But I also play Hoyo's other games, that is Honkai 3rd and HSR, and we're getting fed pretty well in those, on top of the fact that this isn't new treatment from Genshin's team, so while I can't say I'm not somewhat disappointed, I am also not surprised. But my current enjoyment of Genshin right now isn't being impeded by anything, so I don't really care. So this is kind of a funny comment to me because they touched on so many things, first of all, and kind of went in some directions that I didn't expect. Like they started it with I play Hoyo's other games and we're getting fed pretty well in those. So you would kind of think it means that they're even more bitter about like Genshin, like the treatment from the Genshin team. But then they kind of just went with it's all right. Like at least I'm getting fed there. But anyway, I'm glad that they do find satisfaction in getting fed better in these other games, and that that's helping them kind of keep playing Genshin because if they're a bit unsatisfied there, like at least they're getting satisfaction elsewhere. But yeah, they just said this isn't new. This isn't new treatment. So like why would I expect more? Like why would I hope for more? We Major said it's an odd question to answer. On one hand, it's a bit disappointing since it just feels like a larger than average event and not a big celebratory one. But on the other hand, it's kind of in line with what we've been getting the last few years, so the standard has been set. God Chaos said, I'm not satisfied, but I'm also not surprised. Genshin has never been generous with these big events. We only even got what we did because people had outrage before. So this doesn't hurt as much. I'm a lot more casual with Genshin these days. That little bit about the so this doesn't hurt as much, it kind of hurt me. I mean, I felt a little bit of pain there because it's like when you're so used to getting burned that you just numb yourself to the pain. Is that too personal of an analogy? That's what it feels like. And then Rust says it very succinctly. I wasn't even waiting for much at this point anyway. And then there are comments that kind of have a similar sentiment, but then they don't just talk about the rewards. I like that these commenters pointed out other stuff because like again in my opinion it's not just about the rewards. Yori Gaming says what Genshin needs is better quality of life like the resin system, artifacts, loadouts, some permanent content like simulated universe. Adam Cuthbert said, I don't really get why fewer freebies of in-game currency is that upsetting. I'm more upset the events lately have been so lackluster and dialogue heavy, and the endgame content has been stagnant for so long. A few extra pulls isn't going to retain restless players. Personally, I do understand why like the freebies of the game currency is upsetting because, you know, you can put it in a lot of different contexts. Adam Cuthbert did point to other parts of the content that they feel have been disappointing, especially like the endgame content that has been stagnant for so long. So they're kind of saying here that, okay, even if Hoyo did give more extra pulls, that's not going to be enough to retain restless players. And honestly, I do agree with that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. And then Kyril said, my expectations for rewards was so low that I focus more for new quality of life and new things in the games. And then later on, they said, the least that I wanted is increase in resin and resin bank like in Star Rail or changes in the weapon banner. Resin increase is a thing that I've been seeing a lot of comments of lately. And I do know that early in Genshin's release, they did raise the resin. I think it was from 120 to now what it is 160. Since Star Rail now has that feature where they kind of save the backup resin, like they do have the resin bank, then that's like another thing where Genshin players are like, when can we get that? When can we get our own resin bank? These little things kind of add up. Little things and bigger things like endgame content, like lacking certain content. They do add up. I think that it is important to acknowledge that no, this isn't just about the rewards because like the way that I see it, the community wouldn't be this angry if the rewards were the only problem. I personally think it would not be the case. The rewards are definitely indicative of other problems like overall appreciation for the players and overall communication and just being in touch with the player base. But then that is also something that manifests in other aspects like lacking certain features, certain content, certain quality of life. And we've already had like a couple of comments that touched a little bit onto this sentiment, but then here are some replies that were a lot more heavy-handed on it, that focused a lot more on it. Psych Noodles said, TBH, I get the feeling that the majority apathy isn't because we're fine with the rewards. It's just that any hope they'd actually show appreciation to us was smoked out after the first year or so. Uncanny Creative said, I think there should be an I used to care, but Hoyoverse has only made me realize that this is what we might be getting forever category. I still wish for better rewards, but from 3 years of playing, knowing that that's 1 in a million chance. Or know that that's 1 in a million chance. Uncanny Creative just straight up said that that should have been another category. And honestly, now I wonder if that had been another category, how many would have voted for that? Like, would that have split the I don't care category to make the actual I don't care category so much smaller? Or yeah, I don't know how many people would have voted for that, I wonder. And this is kind of similar to the sentiment of like the standards have been set so low. I just kind of wanted to highlight these comments because they really talk about some long-term stuff, and the next ones are a bit more specific with regards to giving feedback and not being heard, which I think is very important. Franz Williams said, not happy about it, but also not surprised. There's a part of me that is still expecting something more, but I know they will not listen. So I just gave up. I don't even fill up the surveys anymore because I just felt unheard. I just accept whatever they give us and move on. Besides, there are other games out there where I feel more rewarded, cuff Honkai Star Rail, as a player. Like, I do hear from my chat and from my mods that a lot of the time when the survey comes in, they are repeating their feedback in that like open reply box. They're repeating what they say. They're repeating the same things that they've been asking for because we never get any follow-up if these things are heard. And we only know down the line that okay, apparently they're putting in like artifact presets or something or fast equip and stuff. No word about what comes after that. So I think it's so hard when we just feel like feedback isn't being heard. Like whether it's regards to rewards or something else. Gabrielle No One said, besides the Zhongli buff, Hoyo never really listens to the community. Been getting the same rewards every anniversary and our Lantern Rite season, and not surprised if they'll shrug off people's suggestions and give the same things again. Kinda stopped sending those survey things too because I just got tired. To point out that some players would just rather not say anything because they don't think it's going to make a difference. That's really sad. That's really something I think worth being disappointed in. As a content creator, I get a lot of comments. Like, I get to read a lot of comments, right? I've talked about this a lot with my content creator friends, and if you've listened to this podcast's previous episodes, then you probably are a bit familiar with this back and forth where we can recognize which comments are kind of trolling, like which comments are just there to be mean, which comments don't really care about you or your content. But then we can also tell which commenters genuinely really care about you and your content, and those that do offer constructive criticism because they want you to be better. And as content creators, like we always have to know and recognize those comments because if people out there want us to be better, then it does help us. Like, yeah, we do want to be better also. So we pay attention to those comments because they are genuine, they are constructive, they are there with good intention. To like translate that to a business and gaming perspective, okay, Genshin is sending us surveys because they want to know what we have to say. But then also, do they really want to know what we have to say, or do they really use it? And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's easy to take millions of survey forms and sort through them and try to satisfy everyone. No. Like, I know you can't satisfy everyone. But when it comes to the point where players just feel like it's useless to send surveys, to give feedback, that's really disappointing. Kian or Sian Ki-jun said, I just want them to listen to the community and the surveys. We do those and they always feel unanswered unless it is convenient for them. There was an outcry for them to fix Dia, which they blatantly ignored, and now another error and they will likely ignore it. It's just gross in their part at this point. Like I don't really have anything more to add to that. Dia was really okay, now that I think about it, like Dia was another major issue that everyone was pretty unified on. But yeah, it's like nothing happened after that. Mayaville said, I'm mainly an exploration and story player, so I'm not too bothered and quite excited for Chenyu Vale lore. The only time I have been actually heartbroken or mad at Genshin was the Dia incident. Another Dia incident. Mentioner, yeah. Since I absolutely loved her in the Sumeru story, but since nothing even changed after the entire community was outraged, I've just learned to temper my expectations. I think another thing that this speaks to, honestly, is powerlessness because we just want to know that our voice matters, that we have a stake in the matter because we do. Like we are the player base, we are the consumers here. And I'm not trying to say that our voice is the final voice, that we have the final decision here, because obviously not. Just the feeling of being unheard, it makes us feel powerless, it makes us feel out of control. And like you might think I'm being too dramatic about this, but really, I'm just trying to dig into this long term issue that has led to this kind of sentiment of people saying that I've stopped filling up the surveys because it's useless anyway. Those hit the hardest for me. Keruvin said, for me personally, I couldn't care much about the whole reward thing, but in my eyes, it is a very dirty treatment to the players. I also do feel very unsatisfied about our feedback being ignored and worse, implemented on another game instead. It screams betrayal, and I don't like how the team treats the players like this. Plus, more in the comment about how they're going to go free to play moving forward, and they hope for more content creators to talk about this. Aside from us feeling unheard about our feedback for Genshin, the feedback goes into the other game. There's nothing stopping us from playing the other game, like we can enjoy both. For those who just want to stick to Genshin or who just want Genshin to get better, like yeah, it will make us feel at least a little bit bitter. I'm always a little bit afraid that I might be taken out of context and it will sound like I'm invalidating Honkai Star Rail players because I'm obviously not. Like Honkai Star Rail is a great game. And I'm really, really happy that the players there get to be satisfied. And Honkai Star Rail is not without its flaws. But when we look at Genshin, like we cannot remove Honkai Star Rail from the equation because it's just been impacting the perception of Genshin ever since Honkai Star Rail came out. Like we really can't separate them in some situations, especially situations like these. Yeah, it just overall does feel bad for Genshin players who just want Genshin to be better, but then it's not getting better in the ways that we hope. I'm not going to ignore that Genshin has been doing better in certain aspects, like story, and then we're getting a new area. Like, yes, we are excited for those things, but again, things that they have been lacking, they're very much there also. That was like a lot of comments to go through, and although there are way, way more, like seriously, when I was looking through comments today before recording, the comment count was at 888. Literally 888 comments. And I'm sure that those who have run this type of survey on the situation have probably gotten more comments or around that many comments because there's a lot to be said. And again, I'm really, really grateful to everyone who shared their sentiment. I do like to know what you guys are thinking. I do like to know, like, this is my own little feedback survey every now and then. I do like to kind of get the pulse of the community. And I also like to kind of synthesize it and see the common grounds between the common threads, the trends, and what others are pointing out that I may have missed. Very, very thankful to those who did take the time to type out their feelings and their insights on the whole thing. So, to kind of close this off, the next question is, what can Genshin or Hoyoverse do? You know, when we have people who are just like continuously long-term dissatisfied and not just burnt out, because you can be burnt out of the game and just want to leave it, but you can also be not burnt out but still unsatisfied because of certain things. I feel like there is a bit of a need for Genshin to regain the favor of the community and bring back player satisfaction. Because even though we do have a fraction of the player base that is still satisfied, they do still have to address the outrage and the outcry and whatever led and escalated the situation. So, when it comes to what they actually can do, to me, there are different levels to this. If they just adjust the rewards for Lantern Rite, that's going to just be a band aid solution if it's a one time thing. Now, the next level to that is if they start being more generous with rewards more consistently. Like over the course of several patches, they start showing that every patch there's something new, something that we weren't getting prior, something that's like surprising us, something that's like, you know, a pleasant little treat for players that we haven't gotten before, but then we start getting now. I think that that would be honestly a good move. It's not just a one time thing, but it actually shows like a willingness to change their attitude towards rewards and freebies and things like that. Now, even above that, is going past the rewards. And I've been talking a lot about what goes past the rewards. So here it is. What can they do long term aside from rewards? One, better communication, especially regarding player feedback. Like they used to have that, well, I'm not sure how often they do it now, but they used to have the Tevat times thing and they would use it to consolidate some silly player data, like this many players climbed this mountain to get that thing. And while that was very like cute and entertaining, I think it would be nice if they had something like that for the player feedback, or to summarize player feedback, just to show that yeah, they actually look at it and they process it. And, you know, if they had like a section in the Tevat Times where it's like 76% of the player base suggested that we add this thing to the artifact thingy, and then there's a line afterwards where Paimon comments, Paimon thinks that's a good idea. Why don't we look into that, Genshin team? You know, like in the cute way that they would do that. I feel like that would make a difference because at least they're publicizing that, yeah, they looked at the survey feedback and they are considering it. Like it's as simple as that. Just something to like give us a sign. You know, like give us a sign. They do see what we are saying and they are taking it into account. In line with that, you know, bringing in quality of life updates. I hate to sound demanding, but if they could not just communicate, like if they can't communicate their progress on that they would at least bring it in sooner or show that they are bringing it in sooner, because yeah, it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years, and the development in the artifact department, we've got things like the showing player-based data, we've got like the new sorting and auto-locked features, and then we're going to get the fast equip stuff. But then I feel like the fast equip and the auto locked only happened very recently. And then things like resin, the whole resin bank thing, like that would be much appreciated. The things like story related stuff, being able to replay event quests that you missed out on so that lore would not be time locked and things like that. Permanent endgame content, something that isn't Spiral Abyss, because now we have Honkai Star Rail that has their pure fiction as well as their simulated universe. There have been Genshin events that players have wanted to become permanent. I feel like I'm not even touching the surface with the stuff that people want or have been asking for in the feedback forms. Like I'm talking content pretty vaguely because that's a whole other conversation. Even if they do continuously update content, like give us new areas, give us new events, give us new stories and things like that, they are neglecting some things that players have been asking for a very long time. It's really more of hoping to feel that the team is committed to making the players feel heard, aside from appreciated, definitely heard as well. I'm sorry if it got like a bit redundant at times, if I was like repeating points, but in this episode, I just wanted to take a look at the opinions and perspectives of those who did share and highlight those. Again, it's nice to know that we have a very wide range of perspectives to look at. We have those who are satisfied, those who are unsatisfied, and those who, have gone through the whole arc of caring to not caring, even though it honestly sucks to be in that position where you feel like you care about something so much, but then it eventually just gets easier for you to not care. There are also comments like they don't go too much into like Genshin drama or be mad at the situation because there are other things in their life that they want to give more energy and pay more attention to. And honestly, I feel those. At the end of the day, however you are dealing with it, I hope that you are taking care of yourself. Well, personally, I'm going to keep trying to fill out those survey forms because it's just maybe I'll hope for the best, expect the worst, that kind of thing. But also, like, don't hold back your joy for the game. If you still have joy for the game, don't hold back your excitement. Be excited with others. But of course, if there's something that you feel needs to improve or needs to change, like definitely say it. Anyway, I think that's it. I hope that you enjoyed listening. For the next episode, I do have a very special guest planned, and it's going to take a much lighter note, a much more fun note. If you like this episode, leave a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can find this podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Spotify has the audio only version. Please share in the comments your opinion or your perspective on the situation, especially if you haven't yet. And I will see you soon. Take care.